What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video and welcome to the 450 shootout for beta 17 in MX bikes. Now, these are the beta 16 OEMs still, don't get it twisted. They've not been updated yet, but with the new traction in beta 17, I thought it'd be a good idea to test these all out, see how they feel, and just really give you my thoughts and feedback really, and some interesting numbers along the way. So first of all, I'm just going to give you a brief description of how I went about conducting this shootout. I chose the track Paris MX, which I am now completely sick of after the amount of laps I ran. However, the reason I chose that is I feel like it's a good mix between motocross and supercross. Not a super long lap time, but a track that I felt I could ride consistently at the same-ish pace from bike to bike. I'd done 10 laps on every single bike. So, yeah, that is literally 100 laps of this track. And out of those 100 laps, I narrowed it down to the 5 fastest. And I've got some numbers that I'll show on screen for each bike. What I'm going to do now is take you through like a quick lap of each bike, my thoughts on how the bike feels and rides, and then obviously I'll walk you through the numbers on screen to do with kind of like fast laps and such as well. However, before we get into the shootout, I wanted to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Valor Racewear. If you're a fan of clean and original gear to make you stand out on the track, then the boys over at Valor have got you covered. Head on over to the Valor Racewear Instagram page and drop a follow to keep up to date with the latest news and gear releases. The guys at Valor have told me they've got a few community-based competitions in the works, also known as the Valor Creator Comp, with the main goal of getting the community involved in having a good time whilst doing it. There will be a video editing contest with a prize up for grabs, as well as a designer competition for a set of Valor Racewear gear designed by the community, which will be released amongst the Valor catalogue on the MXB Mods website. Who knows, maybe they'll even name it after you. Further details are coming in the near future, so make sure to follow the Instagram page to stay up to date. Check out Valor's full range of gear on the MXB Mod site. Both links will be at the top of the description, and thank you very much again to Valor for supporting the channel, and on to the rest of the video. So I started things off on the bike that I knew would be the slowest out of this whole kind of experiment, and that was the Alta. I feel like the Alta's been done a little bit dirty in this game. You know, it is so slow, it's painful. I would even go as far to say that any other 250 OEM is faster than the Alta 450 equivalent. It's painfully slow, as I say. It's so hard to clear the jumps, you have to stretch absolutely everything. But oddly enough, at the same time, when you're in the air and you give it a handful of throttle, the front end comes up really quickly. So it's definitely torquey, it's got it, it's just got no top speed whatsoever. And as you can see on the screen, the average lap times was around just under a 1:35. My fastest lap on it was a 1:34.7, and funnily enough, the gap between my first fastest and fifth fastest lap was actually really low. There was only 0.3 difference, and I honestly think that is just due to the fact of I didn't really have to shut off anywhere. There was no real room to gain or lose a lot of time. It was just the same lines every single lap, and yeah, that was the Alta. Next up, we had the KTM. Now, moving from the Alta over to the KTM, oh my god, it was night and day difference. The KTM, I honestly feel like, in a straight line, is the fastest bike. It has got so much power. However, I do think in some turns it does negatively impact it, and I'm not sure if it's just down to riding style or what. I do see a lot of people using the KTM, especially in the Aerial Supercross Championship. It's my go-to bike on tracks like Forest, for example, so tracks with not many bumps that are just wide open everywhere. I feel like it really thrives in that sort of environment. I did find the back end was a little bit wild. The back end did try coming around on me a bunch of times, so you have to be really particular with your throttle control. As you can see on screen, I had a fastest lap of a 1:29 flat. Now, that is literally 5 seconds quicker than the Alta. It's a drastic difference there, so they're not even on the same playing field. My average lap was a 1:29.7, however there was a bit more of a gap between my fast laps, and I think that is just to do with the back end being a little bit unpredictable sometimes. So between my first fastest and my fifth fastest lap, there was a second in total there. The TM was next up on the chopping block. Now, I was always personally a big advocate of the TM250. If anyone remembers, back in the day I used to main the TM250 quite a lot, and I won a few Supercross races on it. However, the 450 I was a little bit let down by, I'll be honest with you. It felt very heavy. I found that the front end wanted to push a lot into the corners. I did have a hard time just getting the bike turned to then go again. Overall, it just lacked a little bit of oomph, and I don't know if it is just because it's a heavy bike in general or what, but It's not really a bike that I would recommend, if I'm being completely honest. I did struggle with it. Really struggled to find a flow and be consistent overall. The fastest lap time that I had on TM was a 1:29.9. So as far as fast laps go, it was under a second away from the KTM, which did surprise me when I looked at the stats. However, the average lap was a bit slower at a 1:30.1, and again, I was a bit more consistent on it, only half a second difference between my lap times. However, I do think that's down to the fact that it's a little bit slower, and similar to the Alta, there's not a whole lot of room to gain and lose time throughout a lap. Now, you will see both the Fantic and the Yamaha on the screen right now. The reason for that is, directly from the OEM creators' mouths, the Fantic and the Yamaha are absolutely identical in every single way, both in suspension, both in engine, power, geometry, everything. The only difference you will find between these two bikes is the appearance of them. So if you want to ride one or the other, just pick whichever one you like the look of the most and go for it. So what I've done for these bikes is, instead of doing my 5 best laps, I've done my 10 best laps, kind of between the two. You can see on screen that, funnily enough, the Yamaha had most of the fastest laps on it. I don't know if it's just due to comfortability or whatever, or I know obviously a lot of things are placebo when it comes to like different appearances on the bike. However, Yamaha 1:28.1, that is 9 tenths quicker than I had on the KTM, which I was very, very, very surprised by. I've never been a big fan of the Yamaha. However, seeing that lap time did make me kind of second guess myself a bit. I have noticed more and more people recently using the 450 Yamaha. The Moto Mart team, I believe, started using them quite a lot. I know Aiden uses it now and then. So far it's got the fastest lap time. However, the gap between my best lap and the slowest lap was a massive 2.2 seconds. So there's a lot of inconsistency there. When it's good, it's good. When it's not good, it's terrible, which is a little bit of a frustrating situation to find yourself in. But overall, the Yamaha/Fantic, pretty solid bike, and it did surprise me. Now, another dangerous duo that you've got on the screen is the Gas and the Husky. Now, exactly the same situation as the Yamaha and the Fantic. These two bikes are identical to each other in every way. It's purely the appearance that is different. Now, I would take the result of these bikes with a little pinch of salt, because as you know, the Husky is what I main all the time. I ride it in the aerial supercross, so I definitely feel the most consistent on it. So I feel like these are the only results here that might not truly reflect what you guys would feel, for example, when you first get on the bike. However, fastest lap time was a 1:28.6, average lap time was a 29 flat, so my average lap was essentially my best lap on the KTM, which I thought was really interesting. And then the gap between my first fastest and 10th fastest was a 0.8, so not a big fluctuation there whatsoever. You can see that majority of my fast laps came on the Husky rather than the Gas. However, I do think that might have just been down to more comfortability on the Husky. Like, it's the front end that I usually ride, I know where I want to pull it everywhere, and again, the bikes did feel identical in every way. And you might even just find that the one 10-lap session that I done on the Husky, I was riding a little bit better than I was on the Gas, but very, very solid bike overall. I found that the back end could be a little bit loose at times. However, it was easy to predict how to control it. So you could back it into the corners fine, and if it did slide out coming out of a turn, it was easy to get back in a straight line again. Very good power. It wasn't as fast in a straight line as the KTM, that I felt at least. However, I do think it makes up for it, and it's a lot more nimble in the turns, and turns a whole lot easier. So yeah, very good bike right there. Next we have the Honda. The Honda is a bit of an odd bike for me. It's the bike that, when I moved over to 450s out of the 250 class, is the one that I first started using. Now, the only basis I had for that was appearance. I do like how the Hondas look. I always love watching GoPros by like Roxon, for example, and you can just hear them using the torque of the bike, always at the bottom of the rev range, and that's exactly how I try riding it in game. I'm always trying to bog it a little bit, be quite smooth. However, in terms of just speed and average lap times compared to the other bikes that I rode up to this point, I was a little bit let down by it, I'll be completely honest. The power itself does feel good. However, it does have quite a loose back end. Now, in comparison to the Husky, I said exactly the same thing about the Husky and the Gas. However, I feel like for some reason the Honda, it's harder to control when you do lose that control of the bike. It does turn very sharp in the turns, and I feel like that's just a Honda trait in general. Even in real life, they've always been known well for their turning. That does also impact me negatively as well, because I did find from time to time the front end wanting to tuck where it was turning so tight in comparison to the others. So I suppose if you spend a bit more time on the Honda and just really learn the turning, it could be absolutely fine. However, for me, there was much better bikes that I'd done in this test, so probably not the bike that I'd move to, if I'm completely honest. But overall, again, it's a good like middle of the road bike for me, and yeah, that was the Honda. Next up, we have got the Suzuki. Now, the Suzuki is a bike that I thought, with the traction getting worse in Beta 17, I thought the Suzuki would actually come into its own, because it's known for having a bit less power than the other bikes. However, I thought that less power would then turn into more traction compared to the rest of the bikes. However, it didn't really turn out that way for me. My best lap was a 129.4, so a bit slower than the others. It was about 0.6 off the KX, you know, 0.4 off the KTM. It was better than the TM, I believe. However, the gap between the first and the last lap time was a whole second, so again, a little bit of inconsistencies there. Overall, it just felt sluggish. You know, the low speed didn't really equate to good turning. It still felt like a little bit of a tank trying to get it around the track, and to be fair, it kind of matches up with its 250 counterpart. I don't see a whole lot of people riding it. I think that it's one of the best looking models in the game, of course, but in terms of just the bike's feel overall, I really couldn't get to grips with it, and not really a bike that I would recommend people to go and try out if you was looking to mix it up a bit. Now, finally on this list is the Kawasaki. This bike absolutely surprised me. The entire time I've been playing MX bikes, I have kind of put down the KX450, because I remember riding it once, not that long ago, but I had a lot of drama with the front end tucking. Now, ever since then, I've not wanted to touch it at all. I really very, very rarely see it being used online at all. I know that Dad Shoes used to be a big advocate of it, but he's since moved over to the KTM. Yeah, I never see it in any aerial races, and after riding it myself in this test, I don't know why, I felt very, very comfortable on it, which was a shock to me. And I ran a 128.8, so a little bit behind the Yamaha. However, quicker than the KTM and about on par with the Husky as well. The average lap times are 129.2, so again, very, very good, and not a big fluctuation between lap times, only 0.8 seconds from my first lap time to the fifth lap time. It turned very well. It had very, very good traction. I didn't find myself sliding the back end out much whatsoever. And overall, just a really big shock. I was really, really surprised. I thought it done a very good job. And I would go as far to say, if you told me that I couldn't ride the Husky anymore, I would happily move over to the Kawi tomorrow. No problem for me whatsoever. Very, very good bike, and I would definitely recommend giving it a go if you haven't already. So, finally, if we move over to the stats after riding all the bikes, I've put a few different categories here. So, the fastest lap time overall was the Yamaha/Fantic. It was actually the Yamaha that I ran it on, with a 128.1. The Gas/Husky was a 128.6, and then the KX was a 128.8. You can see there as we go down the list, obviously the Altas at the bottom, Suzuki, Honda, TM, all about the same, not too far apart, and the KTM's just outside that top three. The average lap time, I'm not really surprised by that it was the Husky that came out on top there, as it's the bike that I'm most comfortable on. I say it's probably the only bike that has a little bit of a bias results in this whole experiment. The KX was by far the biggest surprise for me at 129.2. Very, very surprised by it, and definitely a bike that I'll be riding more in the future. The Yamaha came in third place, so although it had the best lap time, it also had one of the slowest out of them as well. So a lot of inconsistency there, which put it in third place overall for average lap time. And then, funnily enough, the bike that was the slowest ended up coming out on top in regards to consistency. And you'll find a common trend there, actually. The Alta, the Honda, and the TM all at the very bottom of fastest lap. However, at the very top of consistency, and again, I think it's purely on the basis of, because they are a little bit slower, there's only so much time you can gain and lose, because you just kind of end up going flat out everywhere. So those are the final results. I did also just have a quick tier list that I made as well, which I'll pull up on screen right now. So right here, these are my final thoughts on these bikes. I've kind of put them in tiers for you. So at the very, very top of the list is the bike that I always ride. So again, a little bit of a biased opinion there. It's the Husky and the Gas combined, because obviously they're exactly the same. It's only the appearance that's different. Next, I have got the Kawasaki and the KTM. Kawasaki was the biggest shock for me throughout this entire experiment. I really, really enjoyed it. The KTM feels so fast in a straight line. However, I feel like it does impact it a little bit negatively in some of the corners. However, if you was to spend the time on it and put a good suspension on it and such, I find that you could probably make that whole lot better for yourself and get it turning how you want. Middle of the line, Honda, Yamaha and Fantic. Now, although I did have the fastest lap on the Yamaha, it was a little bit too inconsistent for me, so I'm not going to put it all the way up there with the KX and the KTM, and it's definitely not going right at the very top. So, nice middle ground bike. You know, I felt like Honda and the Yamaha and the Fantic all ride quite similarly. They're all kind of middle in terms of power, can be a little bit slippery sometimes, but still a very solid bike. And then we get to the bikes that I really wouldn't recommend if you're looking to be competitive at least, and that is the Suzuki and the TM. I found them both quite slow, to be honest. They did lack power. They did struggle to turn as well, which again I was surprised by. You'd think that a slower bike would turn a little bit easier, but they just felt so heavy, and it was really hard trying to just carry your speed and flow around turns. And then at the very bottom, of course, we've got the Althea. It was a good 5 seconds off the pace of the rest of the bikes, so if you're looking for a challenge, then sure, go for it. But if you are trying to be competitive and then trying to win races, it's not the bike for you. As I say, just try it if you want to have a bit of fun with your friends, but other than that, I would not recommend that bike whatsoever. And that'll do it from me. I hope you've enjoyed the Shootout. It did take me a hell of a long time to put this video together, so if you could drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, I would really, really appreciate it. Let me know down below what bike you usually ride when it comes to the 450s, and if you've seen this video and maybe you've found some shocking results on there, if you're now going to change at what bike and you're going to try some other ones, let me know, because as I said, I'm definitely going to try the Kawasaki a lot more than I have been to date. And yeah, it's just a really nice experiment. It's a video that I've probably been putting off for a while now, but I'm very glad that I finally got it done. I will never be touching Paris MX again after running 100 laps on there, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Most importantly, I hope you have a lovely rest of the day, whatever it is that you guys are up to. Thank you again, Valor Racewear, for sponsoring the video. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for supporting the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.
My tent way too damn dark, laugh in your face like man dark. Came a long way from the bad days way back, had to burn down that landmark. Seen some things I ain't really want to see, it's all good, that's what made me me. Now who would I be if I had it easy? Used to break down, now I'm in a 350, like whoa, I've been laying way too low. Had to switch up and change my flow, cause I'm back from the block, had to bust some rocks and dust off the dust to get back in the box. Now why you wanna